The Falcons ran the ball against us decent. Lots of receivers went off, including Keenan. The Vikings fumbled again. The Bengals continue to descend. And Chubb is out for the season. Welcome to the Mish. Alrighty, welcome into the week 2 episode of the Mish. We have just wrapped up week 1 of the season. Still pretty crazy stuff going on. Like most of the league here, the Packers are 1-1, unfortunately, after that 1-point loss. Tough game, but still tied for first at the end of the day. So that's good. Before we jump into, firstly, Lincoln obviously isn't here if you're watching the video. Not quite sure what he's got going on. He messaged us probably in half hour, 45 minutes ago that he can't make it. Didn't say why, but yeah, it's just going to be the cool boys running the show this episode.
Best episode yet.
Yep. So yeah, and it should be a bit quicker. Last week's episode was over an hour, and now we have half the people on it, so it should go a lot quicker. I'm not saying it'll be half as long, but it'll be quicker. Before we jump into the bulk of the show, I've got some beer here, and T-Corn might recognize this. It is a beer that T-Corn actually gifted me for a special occasion. So this is the last one of that 6-pack.
Ooh.
So I figured since it's just the two of us, I would consume that. And it is quite foamy, my goodness. But yeah, business. I think there's still a few lingering payments out there, but not too many. So, alrighty, jumping into, there was one trade. I almost forgot about it, but there was one trade. I can't remember what day it happened. Let's see. It was 6 days ago.
Damn,
so whatever day that was.
Trade.
And
fell through the cracks.
Yeah. It's one of those trades that I feel like it's kind of like a meh. We'll see it. Obviously it could impact further down the line, but Caleb traded Cordero Patterson to State Farm for Josh Downs. So for this week, Cordero was out, and I am not sure what Josh Downs did, if he even played. But
that is a very interesting trade.
So it looks like he had 7.7 points, so not too bad. 5 targets, 4 receptions for 37 yards. So not terrible. Obviously, Josh Downs, a rookie over there in Indianapolis. So, not too shabby for him. He could, emerge. They've got a few solid receivers over there, obviously Pittman, but then also Alec Pierce. And to be honest, that's about it for solid receiving options over there in Indy. They've got a slew of tight ends, but Cordero, the Joker for Atlanta, obviously you've got Algier and Bijan, who will presumably be ahead of him. At least Bijan for sure, I would assume, in that running back room. And then obviously they've got the stud Mac Hollins at receiver, but they also, Drake London and then Kyle Pitts as well. So, I'm not sure how involved in that offense Cordero will be. He's been involved obviously in the past, but as for this season, not quite sure. He's also getting up there in age. I'm not quite sure how old he is, but he's, got to be.
He's 32.
32, so definitely getting up there.
32 versus 22, so they're 10 years apart.
Yeah. If I had to pick one of the two players, I'd probably pick Downs. But I'm not starting him anytime soon. So.
Yeah, I mean, Downs has been kind of consistent. He's, he's going to be the wide receiver 3 with Indy. So, I mean, I think that's worth a little bit of stash value because one of those receivers goes down, he steps into a role with more targets,
Hmm.
or he could emerge to be the number 2 guy because,
For
I
sure.
mean, Alec Pierce really isn't he's all right, but he's not really a true number 2 type of guy. So anything can happen during the season, especially with him. I believe he's a rookie too. So
Yep. Yep.
um,
Rookie.
Cordell
So
Patterson, you kind of know what you're going to get out of him, and I think he's a league winner 2 years ago, but that was
that
two
was
years ago.
2 years ago. So I
Exactly.
highly doubt he'll be near that this year.
Lots changed since then. They drafted Tyler Algier, who was a rookie last year, now Bijan, who's a rookie this year.
Right.
Both guys
And
are
then
better and younger.
Pitts and Drake. So
Yep. That offense is revamped. He's going to be the 5th option now.
yep.
Before they drafted all those guys, yeah, he was option 1 because he's all they
They
had.
had nobody. So yeah, and as we saw evident from the game on Sunday, they will run the ball no matter what.
Yep.
Even if it's like 4th and 3 or whatever, they'll freaking do a pitch. And I'm not sure if Patterson would. I mean, I would have preferred Patterson to begin those runs. I feel like he wouldn't have made it as tough of a day for us as Bijan did and Algier. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, good trade for Caleb. I mean, it's a low risk trade overall. I think
Mm-hmm.
even on State's end. I mean, it's an all right
Right,
trade. I like
right.
Caleb's end a little bit more because there's more upside,
Yep.
more
I mean,
opportunity.
and also, if Algier gets hurt, Bijan gets hurt, then Patterson could
Mhm.
immediately have a role, assuming
Yep,
he's also healthy. So
a lot of
yeah,
what ifs though.
it'll be one to monitor going forward. But like you said, low risk. But I would probably prefer Downs for sure. So alrighty, we will now jump into last week's matchups, and so I will quickly throw that up on the screen here. And we will start with I thought was a fairly exciting matchup, kind of back and forth. Myself versus our lovely guests from last week, Matt. Um, this one was very high scoring. I probably doubled my points from the week prior, so I'm quite happy about that. And Matt again put up a very solid number of points. I believe it was pointed out by I can't remember who, but someone in the chat today pointed out, and today being Tuesday when we're
It
recording,
was Michael.
Michael pointed out that Matt, I think he said the second most points scored, but he's got the most points scored against, which is crazy. He's got like 270 points scored against, which puts him at 0-2, even though he's scored a shit ton of points, which is just really unfortunate for him. And now he's got a Nick Chubb injury that he's got to combat. So, yeah, Nick Chubb, he was his last remaining hope for this week. And if he wouldn't have been injured, I honestly think he could have gotten there based off of how well the backups did once he left the game. But I also had going Miles Sanders, who was he barely outscored Nick Chubb in that matchup, and he played the whole game. That Carolina offense just looked pretty bad. To be frank, both of those games are kind of not fun to watch. Pretty wild stuff going on in both of them. But there were some very solid performances. Obviously, Puka Nacua, 30.1 points, just insane. He's got I think the most. I can't remember if it's targets or receptions, or
For
maybe
a
both,
rookie in their first 2 games. Yeah.
in NFL history, which is just
Uh-huh.
crazy. And I
Yeah.
had some bounce back performances. Tyler Lockett got me 25.9. Zay Flowers solid 10.8. Hunter Henry T Coin, my tight end, picked him up just for you, and he gave me 17.2 points.
I
So I'm
did.
hoping,
I noted for your matchup this week. That was a good pickup. I give you a little bit of a hard time for it.
yeah,
Hey, he repeated it and it paid off.
he
So
sure did. He's the number 2 tight end on the season. I'm not sure how that will continue, but I'm going to keep riding him. Obviously, he's doing pretty well. Um, Other great performances across the board. I'll mention Keenan Allen went off, but yeah, this was a very high scoring, um, fairly close matchup. It definitely, like I said, would have been closer had Chubb not been injured. And like I said, I definitely think he could have gotten there because his backups did great after he left. So that was me versus Matt. Next matchup, another one that came down to Monday night was Abby versus Sam. And this one was also extremely high scoring. We had the highest scoring team on the week in Abby. But she also had to do, or is going to be dealing with some injuries, as Saquon is going to be out for 3 weeks or so. But it was George Pickens who got her the win, 22.7 points. Also, the Pittsburgh Steelers defense who got her 31 points. So she got about 50 points on Monday night, which vaulted her ahead of Sam for that victory. Sam not too shabby, though. Pretty solid number of points here. James Cook, 19.9, 28.9 for T. Higgins in his bounce back performance. And TJ Hawkinson, I think he's the number one tight end on the season with 25.6 points this past week. And yes, number one tight end for Hawkinson. So again, a very close matchup came down to Monday night. Quite exciting stuff here. T-Corn, any other thoughts on this matchup?
Man, that Steelers defense really helped out. And then George Pickens. I mean, those are the two big factors. Otherwise, honestly, without those two, I think Sam easily wins the matchup.
Yep, he noted that he went to bed feeling confident.
I mean, you don't expect a defense to put up 30 points. So
right, yeah, it was crazy. Right off the bat, they had that pick six, which was not entirely Watson's fault, but it was just pretty wild start to that game, and from there it was off. So that was that matchup. Next matchup, Lincoln, our fallen co-host, versus Colin. This one not quite as close, but also not quite as high scoring. Still, both teams did pretty solid, above 100 points for both of them. Brian Robinson had himself a great day, 28.9 points over there for Colin. And Hollywood Brown, great solid, 17.4. But then Zach Moss, 20.7 for Lincoln. Nico Collins, 27.6. And Devonta Smith had that beautiful long touchdown. Lots of yards in that game on Thursday against the Vikings, 23.1 for him. And pretty, solid point stack actually had to do something. 19.6 points for him. Probably would have wanted a bit more, but I mean, that defense over there in Dallas is just too good. So,
interesting fact in this one too, the defenses really didn't play a role towards the scoring. The Giants defense scored 0 and the Packers got 1. So
yeah,
I think that's intriguing as we go through these matchups. We see some defenses scoring 12 plus and, others towards that 0 marker. So
yeah. And also there's a lot of points on Lincoln's bench here too. I mean, not that he needed them, but 20.4 from Thielen and 20.3 from Marvin Mims. So Lincoln, obviously those guys aren't going to do that every week, but it's a good sign for some depth for his lineup here. So,
and one more thing too, I want to mention. I'm intrigued to see how long he sticks with Pitts because he just hasn't been doing well, and he's got Kincaid stashed on his bench, and it looks like he's been seeing some more work.
Yeah, Pitts, with how talented he is, it's getting targeted 5 times, 2 for 15 is not going to cut it. It's just that offense. I think Atlanta, they just run the ball too much to really get any of those pass catchers involved. Unless your name is Matt Collins. Drake had the touchdown as well, but Kyle Pitts is just not getting enough of that very small pie that they've got there in Atlanta. So, moving on to a very close matchup, so close it caused a little bit of controversy. Brian versus State Farm. You could say this one could have come down to Monday night, but Brian benched his defense. I kind of weighed in the chat when it was kind of revealed what Brian was up to here, but I don't think T-Corn, you ever said what your thoughts are on if you think it's all right for Brian to bench or anybody to bench a player in this situation.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, there's nothing that we've ever talked about against it. So I think this is kind of one of those it's one of those Bill Belichick moves here where, if it's not explicitly stated in the rules, you can do it. So I
Yeah,
think this was a smart, savvy move by Brian, to basically sure himself up a win.
yeah,
Now, his defense did score a decent amount of points, so this could have some repercussions for him if he's ever in a tiebreaker and it comes down to points. So, I mean, 8 points, you say might not make a difference, but every point counts when you get down to the nitty gritty of the season. So
yeah,
we'll keep an eye on that. But yeah, my opinion is if it's going to shore up your win, um, I don't think there's anything wrong about it. Unless we came to a group consensus to ban it, that would be the only way that I would agree to it. But since it hasn't been agreed upon and it's not in our rules or expectations, then it's fair game.
yeah, yeah. Like I said in the message I sent out when it came out, I've done this before, and you do obviously if there were to be like a stat adjustment or anything that would somehow give State Farm, 2 or more points, you run that risk for Brian. Obviously, you can
Yep.
you can lose points, but also like you mentioned, it adds points on if they score. And I feel like defense is really the only position you would do that with. You wouldn't necessarily do that with a receiver or anything like that. Although that is possible for them to go negative, it's far less likely. Um, so yeah, it was just a tough break for State. Obviously, pretty close matchup. But there were some good performances on both sides. Justin Jefferson, of course, had 23.9. So very solid stuff from him. Devontae, 20.4. Waller, in his return, had 13.6. So pretty solid stuff from him. DeAndre Swift was very surprising. I was honestly surprised. 27.1 for him on Thursday night. He looked really good. We'll see if he can retain that lead back role in Philly once uh, what's his name comes back.
Kenneth
Um,
Gainwell.
Kenneth Gainwell. That's it. Yeah, we'll see how that'll all shake out because he proved himself to be a very good running back in that game, and it's pretty hard. I feel like to take him out after that performance. So at best, I bet they'll be splitting time. So yeah, just a pretty close matchup here. So not much more. I think I've got more. I don't have anything more to say about it.
Me
Keep
neither.
going.
Nope,
Yeah.
you hit
So
everything right there. So
and Brian moves on to 2-0. So pretty good stuff from him. Moving us on to your matchup, a very very close matchup, the closest matchup as I can see here of the
yep,
week.
it
T-Corn
was.
versus Bruce. T-Corn you were looking to bounce back after your lowest scoring performance last week. And then, Bruce had a pretty solid victory last week. So you're looking to even things out here. And you did. It was 14.41 for you to 13.92 for Bruce. So not even, that's just over, or not even, that's like just under half a point. So very, very, very close stuff. You were telling me before recording how you were kind of bated breath on that for that Denver game.
Yeah. So yeah, this is a close matchup, and for those that were watching that the Denver Washington game, I thought I lost the game after Bruce's defense got a sack to go up an extra point against me. So essentially my only hope was if the Broncos scored again, Bruce would get negative points. So essentially that Hail Mary that got tipped into the end zone for that 6 points that sealed the deal for me. So I mean, so close to being a loss without that miraculous play. I'm 1-1. So I'm 1-1, Michael. I'm 1-1. So it helped me get a win, and that's just fantasy sometimes. You have things go your way, and the opposite end things don't go your way. So,
Yep. And
but yeah, I mean,
that was a wild play too. I saw that live
was.
and it was I'm like obviously, as Packer fans, we've seen Russ throw a Hail Mary. Whether it was a the penalty should have negated it or not, but that one, yesterday or Sunday seemed pretty clean. Just the classic tip drill and was caught for a TD.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll dive into a couple more players here. Had a couple of not so great performances. Darnell Mooney had 0 points. Left the game with an injury, I believe. I'm not quite sure at what point that was, but he has no stat line whatsoever. But Brees Hall, 0.9 points, only 4 carries for 9 yards, and no catches on 2 targets. What's your thought on that, T-Corn, as he is your one of your keepers, and I'm sure one of your favorite players on your team?
Yeah. He is, and he's very explosive. That Dallas defense is really good, though. I think just to put it in perspective, he played the same amount of snaps, the same percentage of offensive plays as that he did the first week. I think you just saw that Dallas did a better job of bottling him up, so he wasn't able to break off any runs. Which, I mean, it happens. You get defenses that are good at containing and keeping you within the rushing lane. So, I mean, I think that's really what you saw.
Yeah. Also being down, I'm sure they were passing more than running.
Yeah.
So that played a part of it as well. So, I was pretty, we're not going to go through all the players here, but some pretty solid performances. Drake London's got his mojo back. It seems a bit, at least 18.7 points for him. I'm still waiting on that complete takeover for Jahmyr Gibbs. Maybe now with Montgomery out, presumably he can fully take over that backfield. Just 7 carries, but he had 7 receptions as well, which is pretty wild for a running back. I imagine he'll probably have a pretty solid next game, especially if Montgomery is out.
I mean, his draft coming in was Kamara, so I think he's going to be a similar guy where he's going to catch a lot of passes. Like, he's probably going to be a 100-target guy by the end of the season.
Which is wild for a running back.
Don't be surprised if he rushes the ball only 150 times, though, because he's not that big. So, I mean, he's just going to be a PPR monster. That's basically it.
Yeah, so pretty close matchup here. Very interesting conclusion. Moving us on to Fiala versus Michael. Not as close, obviously, but pretty decently high scoring. Michael continues to kind of have a very solid team. Obviously, number 1 in scoring last week. And then I believe he was number 3 this week. So very good stuff from him. Daniel Jones, 31.74. Ramondre had 15. Kenneth Walker had 18.4. So very good stuff. Just across the board here, very good performances. Couple injuries, Amon-Ra, I believe he left the game, and same with Brandon Ayuk. So those are going to be some things to monitor as we go into next week for Michael there. But he got the win this week. But then over on Fiala's side, Chris Olave had 14.6, so pretty good. That Dallas defense we mentioned, just 16.25 points for them. So not quite 40 as it was last week, but anyone will take 16.25 defense points. So, and then Josh Allen got a little bit back to what you're used to from him with 23.66, but I'm sure you're still hoping for a bit more from him. So,
yeah, I mean, it was a good matchup. Michael's team's just on a different level than everybody else, I think, right now, and you can see that. I think it was nice to see him getting an easier win without Tyreek going off. So I think his team is just very very consistent. I think most of his players scored over 12 points. Besides his tight end and his flex spots, or one flex spot. So I mean, he's got a good lineup
for sure. Yeah, even 9.5 points from a defense isn't bad. So pretty solid stuff here. And moving on to our final matchup, and by far our biggest blowout, I would say, Caleb versus Adam. Just even look at this. We got negative points here from Dalvin Cook, but despite that, Caleb was able to just kind of blow Adam out of the water. Jared
Yeah.
Goff had 23.92. Bijan tore us up for 21.2 points. Mike Evans just went off 29.1 points. That's that the division, the AFC or NFC South. I believe they have 3 teams that are 2-0.
Crazy.
Which is crazy. Obviously, the best division in football right there. And then Mike Williams, 16.6, so pretty solid. On the other side, Zay Jones, not too great, 0 points for him. And not much better, Pat Frymuth, just 1 catch for 2 yards, 1.2 for him. AJ Brown being outscored, I think, by Devonta this year so far through 2 games, 6.9 for him on the week. The injured Montgomery, 11.4. So still not too bad, but he left. Hoping for a speedy recovery, I'm sure, for him, Adam. And then surprisingly, I believe the number 1 quarterback on the season, Kirk Cousins, 27.56 points for him in that loss against Philly. So pretty surprising stuff.
He's number 1.
I believe he is, yeah. So
he is. I just checked. He's number 1.
Pretty crazy. But yeah.
Damn.
Any other thoughts here, T-Corn?
No, I mean I think we kind of knew that I think we kind of knew that Adam's team was, had the potential. I think the biggest thing for him right now is his top players just aren't producing. So he has the star power. He's got the firepower. He's just not getting points out of them. So, I mean, at some point, something's got to give. So hopefully the guys on his team like Jacobs, Brown, they start, adding an extra 10 to what they're getting now because they're underperforming big time.
Yeah. Yeah, just looking at it's kind of crazy. Jacobs had -2 rushing yards on the day. Which is kind of crazy considering he led the league in rushing yards last year. So we'll see if they can get things figured out over there in Vegas. But that was this week's last week's matchups. And before we jump into the week 3 matchups, I will quickly just run through the power rankings for the week. A couple teams have not changed spots. It's actually a sandwich of the 2 teams that haven't changed spots, but there's been some shuffling around throughout the rest of it. So at 14, we have Sam, 13, Colin, 12, Adam, 11, Matt, and I just feel bad for that. But, he's 0-2, kind of rough for that. 10, we've got T-Corn, 9, State, 8, Lincoln, 7, Brian, 6, Fiala, 5, me, Abby at 4, 3, Bruce, 2, Caleb, and 1, of course, we've got Michael. So,
yeah, I think the only one you could probably argue is maybe Matt. But I think with the Chubb injury, it's tough to see where his team's going to be at. I think he still has some nice bench pieces that might be able to step up. Like he's had some good add-ons. He's had some really good add-ons, and I think some late
Puka,
picks.
he added on. Kyron Williams, he added on. So he definitely knows what he's doing. He's just gotta get a lucky break.
Yeah, I mean,
because he's just been real unlucky so far.
Yeah.
So, alrighty, we will now move on to week 3 matchups. And bada bing, bada boom. First up, this will be an interesting matchup. We've got me versus Bruce. Want to run through it, T-Corn?
Yes, sir. This is going to be a very interesting matchup, in my opinion. I think that the key to this one is going to be, Joey, your wide receivers and your flex spots. Justin Fields as well. A lot of people had him predicted as an MVP candidate at the start of the season, and he's just far from it right now. So you don't know what you're going to get out of that. Hopefully the rushing ability starts to come back and he can get you some points, but he's not looking the greatest. And then, looking through the rest of your team here, like I said, your flex spots, you easily can get some good points out of them. But, you look at a guy like Tyler Lockett, Miles Sanders, you're not really getting a consistent like boom of points each week. So those are just, I would say, your kind of focal point, just your receivers in general there. Now going to Bruce's side, he's got good receivers. Diggs, London, Amari Cooper. So I really like those two. He did have now. I could imagine him changing this, right? So he has two Baltimore running backs currently in. So I know
Mm.
Aaron Jones is stashed away right now because he was hurt. So I think that's really going to be the key in this game. If Aaron Jones plays, I think Bruce is going to come on top against you here. Um, I think it's really tough for me to go against that if he doesn't. But from the reports, it sounds like Jones is playing, so I'm going BJ.
Yep. Yeah, obviously, as a Packer fan, I hope he plays because we know how instrumental he was that week one against the Bears. And I feel like if we would have had him against Atlanta, we definitely were coming away with that with a win. But, just as the fantasy player playing against Aaron Jones, I hope he just gets a bunch of yards and they give it to someone else for a touchdown. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, like you said, it's going to be a tough matchup. Bruce has got some very solid players. Obviously, Tony Pollard as well, but he's kind of canceled out, and then some maybe by McCaffrey, who gets the freaking Giants defense this week, which will be hopefully pretty juicy. So,
Hopefully, yeah, he's
um,
great. He's always going to get 20 points. And I think one more thing I didn't mention is Gus Edwards and who's the other
Justice
RB there?
Justice Hill.
Yeah, they're splitting the workload. So I think one had 10 carries, the other had 11. So that's going to be intriguing to see.
So
Although
yeah, it'll be
I would
interesting to
lean
see which one he plays if Aaron Jones is indeed a go. So,
I'll give you my opinion. I'm not afraid to shy that away. My gut leans towards Gus Edwards. I think he's a little bit more explosive. He's older, but I think he's more explosive. Um, he's more
yep,
explosive RB. So I think, and that's kind of just based even off of just last week's stats too. You could see that, but
right,
again, you never know. It's all about
yep.
scheme and everything. So
Yeah, and then obviously I will be picking myself. I'm not going to change now, but yeah, I think it'll be a close matchup for sure. Uh, it'll, and again we've got some Monday night matchups. So he's got Hurts going on Monday night. I've got Rashad White going on Monday night. I believe there's 2 Monday nights, so I'm not sure if we've got any others. Um, but yeah, again, it could be coming down to Monday night again for my matchup. So I'm going to pick myself, and I think it'll be a fun and nerve-wracking matchup. So, moving on to Michael versus Adam.
and there's one thing I want to mention quick before we get into that is
Yeah.
it's funny because last week you, myself, and Lincoln all picked ourselves to win,
Mm.
and Matt was the only one to say he was going to lose, and we were all right.
Yep.
We're all right with what we
Look at
said.
that.
Kind of weird how that works out, but anyways, yeah, we'll get to this matchup against Dirty Mike and Adam. So, um, man, Michael's team is just, I said it earlier, it's just consistent through and through. He's got really great receivers. So I think, like you said before, Amon Ra, whether or not he plays is going to be a key there. And
And
same
Ayuk.
with Ayuk, yeah.
And
So
he's on
Ayuk,
Thursday, so he's got even less time to get ready.
the reports made it sound like it's very likely he may not play. So that I think that's going to be it's going to be a tough move for Michael to make.
Yeah.
Thankfully, it's a Thursday night game, but he can easily
He's got
replace him with,
options.
yeah, Gabe Davis or Jerry Judy. Going to be an easy filler,
Yep.
but it's more of a who do you pick at that point?
Right.
Because you could go either way. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm not worried about Michael's team in that respect. The only way I get worried is if Amon-Ra also misses time, just because he's a guy that's going to consistently score you 10 plus points.
Right.
If Amon-Ra misses, then I'm a little bit more worried. On the other side, on Adam's side, I think he's got some good players. They just haven't been scoring a lot. So I think this could be a week where we see this game being like the highest scoring game of the week. I really think that because Josh Jacobs, AJ Brown, Godwin, Chris
Yeah.
Godwin, like all those guys really haven't performed well this year, and I think this week could be that week for Adam. I'm still going to pick Michael because I think Michael's team is just a little bit more deep in those positions. But don't be surprised if Adam pulls up the upset because it's very likely that this team can beat Michael. This is the team that I think could take down Michael or at
Yep.
least make it close.
Yeah. I mean, if you looking at just these players on paper, as you mentioned, Adam's got a very solid team, obviously with Jacobs, like you mentioned, and Amon Ra or not Amon, AJ Brown, Chris Godwin. Also, we mentioned it before, but the number one quarterback on the season. We'll see if Kirk can keep doing it. We know that Chargers defense can be very nice to opposing teams. I think I heard these scored like 50 something points on the season, the Chargers, and they're 0-2. So they can give up a point or two.
You know what? I'm going at him. You're talking me into it. I'm changing my pick.
Oh boy,
Michael, you're going to get your first loss of the year here. I'm sorry, but
I mean, it would be beneficial to us as we're in the same division as him.
I'm just thinking through the matchups right now. Danny Dimes, he's got a tough test against
he's got San Francisco. Ramondre's got that Jets defense. Obviously, probably more known for their passing defense, but
and no Saquon. Like Danny,
yeah.
they're just going to key in on him all night. I don't think he'll survive.
Do we both go with the upset here? I was like, when you were talking, I was like, huh, you're giving them, Michael, obviously very solid number one team on the season so far. But I mean, Adam's got some dudes.
Adam's got dudes, and if Michael's dudes have their bad week,
yeah,
I mean, like it happens.
I feel like it'll definitely be closer than expected. Gosh,
I'm leaning towards towards Adam because I don't think Adam's players that he has can go this long with being this bad.
They're just gonna unleash. I mean, also, I'm not sure if you saw, but on Thursday during the game, AJ Brown, I believe, was getting a bit upset with his.
Oh, he was pissed.
His lack of involvement. So there could be.
That man's getting like 10 catches this week.
Yeah. So, you know what? I'm gonna go with you. I'm gonna pick Adam in the upset for this game. It'll be very fun, I think.
I'm excited.
Yeah. Alrighty. Ooh, moving us on to another potentially fun matchup. Your matchup, T-Corn, you versus State Farm.
Yeah, and I like State's name change here. A team has a name versus a team has no name. So good job there, State. Yeah, so I think biggest thing here, for my team is going to be those wide receivers. Finally, they kind of got alive there. Just consistency from Christian Kirk, Osborne. I think the tough thing, like this, and this is probably what will probably help me win or lose, is the running backs. Is Breece Hall going to be able to score points? Also, just the consistency from Kelly and Gibbs being two younger running backs. So I think that'll really play a big factor. On the other side, State Farm, man, Joe Burrow, fun fact here, he is shit. He is QB number 32 right now.
Oh my goodness.
So out of 32 teams, he's number 32.
And
he's not doing well.
Be out for this match. I mean, he's currently questionable. I think he re-aggravated that calf injury. So
maybe that's why he's doing poo-poo.
Yeah.
I mean, keep an eye on that. I mean, the State might be able to just get somebody off the street that's going to score more points than him. So, but yeah, he's got a pretty decent lineup. Ridley, Swift, those guys both scoring pretty good points. I'm intrigued to see his flex spots. I think kind of an even piece for that. So I think that's going to probably really be the kicker here is the flex pieces on who has a better week. Also, I just want to give out a fun fact. If anybody saw the after game for Philly, one of the O linemen didn't realize how many rushing yards that DeAndre Swift ran for, and D Swift possibly owes his O line a dinner for how well he.
Oh,
So yeah, so he might not
interesting.
want to do as well again. I don't know. I guess what that's leading me to say is I'm picking myself.
Yeah, I had a
I'm
feeling
gonna
you
go
might do
against
that.
me.
Um, obviously the Joe Burrow situation, there's a decent chance he doesn't play. Obviously, State would have to pick up a quarterback, as I don't see one on his bench here. Um, but besides him, he's got very solid players. I mean, obviously Derrick Henry. We'll see if Swift can keep it going. Calvin Ridley had a bit of a down week, believe, but he's shown that he's very good at football. And then obviously Waddle also injured, I believe, concussion. He is currently dealing with. Um, and then if Brandon Ayuk does miss, Kittle could have a bit of a higher important role in that offense. So, man, this one I feel like it's going to be pretty close here. Um, could it finally be the week that Jahmyr Gibbs goes off? We'll see. Um,
Could.
could be. I was originally leaning towards State here, but I think I'm going to switch it here. I think Brees Hall will get more involved. It'll be a closer game, I'm sure, against the Patriots than it was against the Giants. So I will be picking
Cheers, mate.
yourself as well, T-Corn. I think it'll be close. Like I said, I would not be surprised if State came away with the win here. Um, obviously, depending, he's going to have to potentially get a new quarterback. But, yeah, I think it'll be a very fun, close, interesting matchup.
Yeah,
Um,
agreed.
so moving us on to Sam versus Lincoln.
Ooh, Sam versus Lincoln. Yeah, this is going to be another interesting one. I mean, Sam's team's actually been putting up more points than kind of what I was anticipating for this year. I mean, he's doing it with guys that really aren't necessarily the most relevant to fantasy football. Like guys like McCain and Mike Thomas. Kind of being out of his prime. Jawan Johnson, Alan Lazard. Being a wide receiver 2/3 there. So I mean, he's doing well. On Lincoln's side, Najee not really performing quite to his the standards that I think everybody thinks he should be. Kind of same goes with AJ Dillon too. Like
Yep.
he's been getting opportunities, but he's not doing well. I think his yards per carry right now are under 3.5 yards, which is just not good for an NFL running back. So he's just not productive. And then you got to talk about Kyle Pitts too. But within that, he's got a couple guys that have been flourishing. Like Devontae Smith, Nico Collins. So it's going to be intriguing to see that. I think just with a couple of the guys that Lincoln Lincoln's team, I think Sam has a strong possibility of getting his first win here. And actually, I'm gonna pick him. I'm gonna go another upset here, and I'm gonna pick Sam just because I think Lincoln has a potential to easily blow this game out of the water, but he's just got a lot of players that have question marks that just have not been doing well this year. So
Yeah. Yeah. As you mentioned, the running backs over on Lincoln's side are not up to performance here. But he did scoop up a couple guys in Nico Collins and Zach Moss who are probably doing better than anybody thought. Um,
right,
especially last week. So I'm sure I bet they are both in good situations to keep going with that. So we'll see how well they can continue on that streak. We'll see if Kyle Pitts can finally get something going, as opposed to TJ Hawkinson, who, as we mentioned, is the number one tight end on the season. Also, just realized Sam is doing the double tight end strategy at the moment with Juwan and TJ Hawkinson in there. So also the double receiving option for New Orleans. So
good strategy.
kind of interesting here. Um, T. Higgins had a pretty solid return game last week. But we'll see if he can keep that up with potentially Joe Burrow missing. And James Cook he finally did pretty good stuff last week, after being a bit quiet week one. Um, I think I'm gonna go Lincoln here. He's got just some very, I usually go talent over anything. He's got very talented players on his team. Garrett Wilson obviously doesn't have Rodgers anymore, but he's still Garrett Wilson and can make things happen. And then I feel very good about Devonta Smith this week. Another prime time game for him to go and ball out. And then, just a couple of those other guys that you don't expect to do well, but then scored 15, 20 points. So I will be picking Lincoln in this matchup, which will move us on to Caleb versus Abby.
Ooh. Yeah, this one's going to be intriguing. Bijan, he's been blowing up the scene, and he's only just going to get better and better. He's not even getting all the RB work there right now, and he's RB number 5, which ironically enough, Caleb drafted him with the number 5 pick. So coincidence? I think not. I'm also intrigued too. Jamar Chase, he's had a slow start to the season. Some of that might be due to the weather that first game, and then also just the play in general, Joe Burrow. So that'll be intriguing to see, unfold this week if he can, bounce back and do what Jamar does and ball out. And then on Abby's side, Saquon Barkley. So it's unlikely that he's going to play this week. It doesn't sound like it was too serious of an injury, so hopefully shouldn't miss too much time, but it's looking questionable whether or not he plays. So if that's the case, her bench is already pretty thin. So I just have question marks because of that. And, honestly, I'm going to go Caleb just specifically because of a couple of those key injuries to her starters that are really going to impact her lineup. And then I guess one more thing to just key in on is the flex. Caleb's just got better flex players overall. I think that's going to be the main difference in this matchup is that starting RB for her not starting and him having Bijan and then those flex pieces.
Yeah. I feel like, Caleb, he's got guys that can just absolutely go off. He's got the mics that can just in any given week go off for like 120 and 2. That Eagles defense, Tampa Bay has been playing pretty well, but that defense is quite good. And I would not be surprised if they just absolutely swarm Baker and force some bad plays for him. And that Jamar Chase, as you mentioned, we'll see if he can return. Obviously, we know he's a very skilled receiver. We'll see how well he could do in this week. And you mentioned Bijan and all that with him. Probably going to get even more work this week, as rookies tend to work up to that kind of stuff. I think I'm going to go Caleb here too. There's just too many guys over on Abby's side. Not to say that they aren't good. Obviously, Deebo Samuel's very good. Joe Mixon's very good. George Pickens showed off what he can do last week or, this past week. Mark Andrews, obviously. But besides that, there's guys that are really, they could come out and give you nothing really. So I think it'll be Caleb, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's closer than what we're thinking here. So, alrighty, moving us on to the penultimate matchup, Colin versus Brian.
Yeah, so this will be intriguing. Hopefully Eckler plays this week, looks promising. So that's going to be a big part of that team over there for Colin. And then just really, keying in on those flex spots again, Marquise Brown, Jacoby Myers, if they can, do some consistent things. Jacoby had a really good week 1 and then was out week 2. So we'll see if he can pick up off his week 1 momentum. And then just on Brian's side, Anthony Richardson, going to be a really intriguing guy to see all year round. Really high upside when it comes to rushing, which is great for fantasy football, right? Because that means more points. And then Tyler Algier, we're going to be intriguing to see how much work he gets as the season unfolds, because he has vultured a few touchdowns in the end zone there from Bijan. So continue to monitor that. And then Brian's receivers, man. Jefferson, Adams, Jackson Smith-Njigba. I mean, he's got some killers there. So I think from my perspective from this matchup, I like Brian's receivers like a lot, and so much so that I'm going to pick him to win. I can see this being a toss up either which way, but I really think Justin Jefferson, Devontae offer you a lot of upside week in week out that is just going to provide his team. And, I think the rest of the pieces, they just need to score an average amount. They don't have to, the rest of his team doesn't have to go crazy in this matchup to win.
Yep. Yeah, obviously, you mentioned Richardson. He is dealing with injury as well. I mean, that's the NFL for you, but we'll see if he can play. He does have Zach Wilson waiting in the wings. I'm sure not hoping for him. But we'll see if Richardson can give it a go. You mentioned Eckler. Yeah, obviously, like him to play. If he doesn't, then that may be a sticky situation. You've got obviously a few running backs on the bench there. But obviously, you're going to be preferring Eckler. You mentioned it, the receivers. I mean, there might not be a better duo than those two. Obviously, Bruce, we mentioned having good receivers, but Jefferson and Adams, that's pretty solid stuff right there, and a couple of founding fathers. And like you mentioned, the flex positions pretty solid. OBJ, we'll see if he can return. He had that injury. Seems like it wasn't as big of a deal. So we'll see if he can return here. And then obviously Brian's still sitting with that bench or that defense spot empty. Obviously he'll be throwing that defense in. They play at noon, so no chance for him to be taking them out, I'm sure. But yeah, I'm going to be picking Brian here as well. I think he's just got that upside, especially with those guys that you mentioned before. Anthony Richardson, I think he's going to be a big key to Brian's potential success here if he does give it a go. And then Eckler, like you mentioned. So moving us on to the final matchup, a couple of teams here that were coming off of a loss, Fiala and Matt.
Yeah, this is going to be a good one too, man. We got a lot of good matchups coming up this week, so a lot of even teams in my book here. So starting with Fiala, he's got consistency with Josh Allen, Michael Pittman, Travis Kelce, Chris Olave. Where I question this team a little bit in comparison to Matt's team when it comes to that RB2, Rashawn Johnson. Rashawn Johnson, that wide receiver too, Treylon Burks. That's where I start to have some of my question marks in his lineup in terms of like keeping up with other teams. And when I look at Matt's lineup, I like some of the moves that he's made to make himself a contender, even though he hasn't won a game yet. And we talked about these guys earlier, guys like Kyron Williams, Puka. I mean, these are guys that, I know some of his late picks, but also, just in general, just pickups through the weeks, through the waivers. Waivers make or break your season sometimes. And for right now, I think Matt's living in the waivers and he's doing it well. So I think that's what's going to help in salvaging his season in the long run. And I'm really just intrigued to see how he does. He has 2 receivers right now that are in the top 5 for scoring. And so I think that's going to continue, and I think his team's going to continue to put up big points. So I'm going to take Matt to get his first win. I think Matt's still going to remain consistent and score points, and I think we're going to see Fiala, where he has a high projected amount. I think his team's going to disappoint a little bit this week and be under that projected base.
Yep. Yeah, and like you said, Matt, he's got crazy. I think he's going to blow his projection out of the water, to be frank. He's just got guys like you said, top 5 receivers. Kyron Williams, the starting running back over there, presumably over in LA.
He's RB2 right now.
That's insane. It's so unlucky for Matt, just how everything is shaken out so far. And now missing Chubb. But I feel like he's got some good players. Jordan Addison, he had that long touchdown that kind of broke my heart a little bit on Thursday because I was facing him at the time. But he's got some very good players. I agree wholeheartedly. he's going to get his first win. I think it's, like you mentioned, Matt's going to blow his projection out of the water. And I could definitely see some of these guys not living up to their projections over on Fiala's side as well. Like Michael Pittman had that long touchdown, but other than that, I'm not quite sure how well he did. Mentioned Treylon Burks. Obviously, Travis Kelce is going to be Travis Kelce. And Chris Olave, he could be pretty well, unless obviously he's going to be probably followed by Jair quite a bit over there on Sunday.
Well, Drake London just burned him, so I mean anything can happen.
I suppose so. Obviously, and there's that Dallas defense that you're never going to count out, especially when they're playing the Cardinals. So, I think it's going to be Matt in this one as well. And, don't think it's going to be all that close. I'm really rooting for Matt, newest member of the league and just being absolutely terrible luck so far with these matchups. So, that was the week's episode, and gosh, we're already almost at an hour again. That's just, I don't get how the time does fly when you're doing these things.
Myself.
So, I mean, we just got so much to say, and that's just kind of how it goes sometimes. So
we'll be better. We promise.
Good luck to you, T-Corn. You're not facing me, so I hope you win. And
you too.
Obviously you picked against me, but at least I hope you're hoping I win. But
always
whatever if you don't. But not sure where Lincoln is. We'll be sure to give him lots of crap if he returns next weekend or next episode. So any last words, T-Corn?
No.
Perfect. All righty.
Been a pleasure.
So
good luck, boys and girls.
Yeah. Good luck, everybody. So except for Bruce. So with that, thank you and thank you.
Thanks.